Good evening and welcome to the Dominate Law Expert Panel, the community dedicated to empowering attorneys as entrepreneurs. Tonight's discussion, Rebuilding the Law Firm for an AI Era, tackles the one of the biggest threats or perhaps opportunities facing the profession. We are moving fast and past the hype of AI and getting into the operations, the ethics, and the economics of how a modern firm survives and thrives. I'm your host, Dan Disha, and tonight we are going to give you the roadmap to bridge the gap between being an excellent lawyer, running a future-proof business. Right. And we'd like to give a massive thank you to our platinum sponsor and growth partner, Echo Marketing, founded by Naren Arulraja, the very same founder of Dominate Law. For nearly 20 years, Echo has helped attorneys across the globe stop being the best kept secret in their town. They truly believe that great care deserves great visibility. Now, before we meet our panel, I would like to share a quick insight from our partners at Equa. Let me ask you this. When potential client in your area are searching for legal support does your firm actually show up or are they finding other firms instead? This is a major challenge for many law firms today. You may be providing excellent legal representation, but if the right clients can't find you or don't understand the value of your approach, you're missing out on meaningful opportunities. The good news is there's a solution. With the right strategy, clear client education, intentional intake systems, and value-aligned visibility, you too can attract better fit clients and build a more sustainable, future-ready practice. And here's the best part. Stay with us because we have something truly special for you. A resource designed to help you strengthen your practice with clarity, purpose, and impact. Now, let's look at the main points we're going to cover here tonight. We're going to dissect what AI can genuinely replace versus where it fails. We'll look at the new skills junior associates need to survive. We will break down the new law firm business model because the billable hour is changing. And finally, we will look at the ethical risks you need to block today. So, with that being said, let's meet our expert panel who is going to take us through this discussion. Our expert tonight knows what it looks like at the legal system and see code instead of just cases. He's a technology lawyer who has clerked for federal judges, litigated for over 15 years, and even helped companies navigate cybersecurity crisis. But he didn't stop there. At Clio, he and his team are combining the business of law with the practice of law. Using generative AI to extract insights from over 1 billion legal documents worldwide, he has built an ontology of over 18,000 legal tags, effectively standardizing how we understand legal data. Before Elon Musk was campaigning, he was tweeting about this man, saying, "This guy rocks." Please welcome Damien Riehl.
Thanks so much. And I should add that, yeah, Elon, my buddy says that Elon has horrible, horrible judgment in all areas, including this one. Good to be with you today.
It's great to have you here, Damien. So with that being said, let's get into the main Q&A section here. Right. My first question to you. In today's legal practice, which tasks has AI proven genuinely reliable at handling? And which core legal functions still require human judgment?
I think that a lot of what I went to law school for and a lot of our listeners that went to law school for are being largely done by AI today. As I spent a lot of time working in law school, and I would say, be sure that you go to the stacks of the books. Because they said back in 1999, when I was a first-year law student, they said, you won't always have Westlaw. And you won't always have Lexus. So you'll want to be able to go to the books just in case you don't have those things. So anyway, that opinion didn't last long because I've always had electronic resources, and me going to the stacks didn't really make me a better lawyer, it just wasted my time. And so I think that what we're having now with AI is AI could be able to read through, a 12-hour legal research task that it used to take me 12 hours, and it literally does it in a minute and a half. And it does not just as well as me, but way better than I can. Because when I would maybe read when I was litigating a few cases and then find the ones that would work best and make it into a brief. But in the same time that I would read a few cases, Vincent reads through hundreds of cases lands on the
Mm.
25 that are above a 70% threshold, and then is able
Mm.
to give a really good 25 or 30-page brief that is on top of this in about a minute and a half. That's less time than it would take for me to read half of one case. And so
Right.
really, I think that when we think about what we as lawyers do, it's not doing research for research's sake. We're actually doing research to be able to reach an end goal, to be able to win
Right.
the case, or to be able to draft the contract. And so if you think about, legal work not and research not as a means by itself, but a means to an end, I think that we as AI can actually give a lot of the end too. You
Mm.
can actually make the documents. We provide complaints, answers, motions, that kind of thing. So really what's left for us as humans, if you think that your legal work was providing widgets, that is the motions,
Okay.
the briefs, the pleadings, or the contracts that you widgets. I think we're going to be sadly mistaken because the widgets AI is going to be taking all the widgets. But really, what the clients are buying is not really a widget from you. They're buying trust. They're saying, hey, I'm your lawyer. Your problem client is now my problem. That is, you can trust me that I'm going to be able to shepherd you through these hard problems that you have. So we're selling trust. And I think that humanity really is what's going to come to the fore going forward is that, you trust ChatGPT to give you a non-hallucinated answer. Or do you trust Gemini or do you trust any AI? OpenClaw is the agent of the day. And you probably trust them less than you trust the human because you can actually look that human across the eye. And there's my friend who is Jordan Furlong says that there's probably three aspects of humanity that are going to be left after the AIs take over. One of them is trust. That you can trust me to have the problems. And number two is to be able to say that integrity, to say that opposing counsel knows that I'm a person of integrity and the judge knows that I'm a person of integrity in the way that they won't necessarily do that for AIs. And then so trust, integrity, and then intuition is the last one. Because you're not going to be able to, if you're in front of a judge, you're not going to be able to have ChatGPT in your ear as you're arguing in front of a judge. And you're not going to have ChatGPT in your ear as you're around the negotiation table. For that, you need intuition. So I think that trust, integrity, and intuition probably are going to be the three aspects of humanity that will persevere even as the AIs are doing a lot of the lower work that is making a lot of the widgets. And the last thing I'll say in the last 30 seconds that we have is to be able to say, we are going to go from ideation where we make a lot of, we sit back and we think really hard. And in that same time that we think, AI can, and maybe have 3 ideas, AI can come up with 100 ideas. And so what's left is we're not ideating, we're actually curating the good ideas with our good taste. And so I think we're going to go from an ideation, starting from a blank page, to a curation and being able to give our taste.
Okay. I apologize for that. We are kind of testing a little thing over here. But Damien, I am curious about one thing you mentioned over here, right? With regards to how things were done in the past. You would go to the stacks first and spend a little bit more time looking at cases that might not be as relevant as you mentioned, like above that 75% threshold, right? What are we losing there? I mean, there should be something that we're losing there, right?
Maybe. So like the reason, so what is the reason for researching? Part of it is to understand the law, right? To get a sense of, where the law says you can do something or where the law says that you can't do something. And by reading cases, we kind of take the law in by osmosis, where
Mm.
where we think if we read enough cases, we will just absorb what the law is. And so I think the basis of your question is say, well, if we're not absorbing like that, are we really losing something? And I think the answer is maybe, because we're kind of losing that intuition that if you read
Mm.
1,000 cases, then you'll get intuition as to what those 1,000 cases do in a way that you can't, that if you prompt ChatGPT or an AI model like mine 1,000 times, that doesn't really stick in your brain in the way that does to wrestle with the cases like in the past. So I think that's maybe
Mm.
one thing that we will lose is to be able to lose our intuition. And there's a real question as to how important our intuition is. I think it's really important, but I also thought
Mm.
it was really important to use a calculator or to do mathematics in my head. But calculators can do that all the time. And maybe losing calculators is less important, but I think that intuition probably is more important than calculators.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Damien. Now, where do you see the biggest disconnect between what AI tools are marketed to do and what they can realistically deliver for lawyers?
I think, we are all going through maybe the most exponential growth of technology in our lifetimes, where if you had said let's say before ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, if you would say in less than 4 years' time, in 3.5 years, we are going to have AI beat 99% of humans on the bar exam, they would have said, you're crazy. Like that's a fool's errand. That will never happen. But here we are just about 3 years later, and that has happened. And we went from horrible images, like, AI created images were just like, I don't know if you remember Will Smith eating spaghetti, but it was just like, it was abhorrent how awful it was back in 2023. And now they've done double blind studies to say that people can't tell the difference at all between the AI generated and the human. So anyway, so to your question about marketing, I think that, people that were marketing that AI was going to beat 99% of humans, if they were marketing that in 2023, people thought, oh, that's hype. But here we are, and it's true. So I think as we reach this exponential growth up, I think we're all going to have to reassess, like, what is it that is truly marketing hype, or what is it that AI can actually do it, but I'm just too busy heads down doing my work, and I'm not looking up to realize what's happening in the world around me. There's an evergreen cartoon where someone is taking a cart, and the cart has square wheels, and somebody comes to them with a round wheel saying, here you go. And the square wheel person said, no, 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 I don't have time. I'm too busy. And so I think that the AI is the round wheel that's being given to the square wheel person. And the round wheel is now going exponentially faster, beating humans on the bar exam. And I think that, AI tools, there's Anna Guo, Guo is the name of a researcher. I think she has LawBench is the name of her study, but she does benchmarks to be able to say humans do a thing, and then the machines do a thing, and then they mix them up and then give them to human reviewers. And she said that ChatGPT out of the box beat humans. And the human reviewers said that the machines, Gemini and ChatGPT, were both more reliable and more useful than the humans. And that is ChatGPT out of the box, and that is Gemini out of the box. So if you think about what legal technology tools do on top of those, of course, they can only do better, right? Because ChatGPT was not made for legal, and Gemini was not made for legal. So, but if those tools build upon ChatGPT and build upon Gemini as they do, how much better can they be than humans? So then we have to say, okay, is this really marketing hype, or is this marketing reality? And if you are not using the tools like this, are you bringing a knife to a gunfight? There's a real question as to, is it going to be ethically, we're going to talk about ethics in a bit, but there's a real question. Is it ethically you not doing your ethical duty if you don't use these tools? That maybe by declining to use the tools, maybe that's the ethical problem.
Right. Perhaps if we take a step back and consider, okay, if we don't use a pen and paper, are we really doing the best for our clients?
That's right. There's been all sorts of judicial opinions saying just that. Like someone had asked for fees when they had done research on books, and the judge said, no, you don't get your attorney's fees because you wasted time, because you didn't fulfill your ethical duty to do legal research like God intended to do electronically.
There we go. Now, Damien, how is AI reshaping the skills that junior lawyers and law students need to develop to remain competitive?
I think that, when I was a baby lawyer in 2002, I thought, if I just research really well and if I write really great briefs, of course I'm going to make partner. That's what I know in 2002. And of course, that was not true, because the people who made partner were not just those who wrote briefs and did really well with their legal work. Of course, that was all well and good. But the people that made partner were the people that brought in money. That is, if you brought in the clients, and if you were able to not just do good work, but bring in enough clients to bring in cash. I know really horrible lawyers that really drafted horrible briefs that made partner because they brought in money. So that is the dirty secret of law practice, is it doesn't matter how well you do it in your practice, in your legal work. Really, in the end, law firms are businesses. And so when we look at it through that lens, AI is now a way that we can maybe make more money as businesses than we ever have in the past. And the way that we can do that is, in the old world, if you're billing by the hour, you would say, well, wait, why would I pay for a tool that makes me less money? Because I get paid by the hour, and the slowest lawyer wins the race. Because if you spend 10 hours on a thing that I spend 1 hour on, you make more money than I do. And that's the billable hour paradigm. I'm not incentivized to do things faster. But if you maybe move away from that billable hour paradigm to go with what my friends, a lot of flat fees. And with flat fees, if you shrink your cost, you increase your profit
Mhm.
margin. So this flat fee paradigm or subscription model to say,
Yeah.
hey, as a small business, you pay me X number of dollars a month, and then I'll give you X number of hours. And my friends who do that, they say this is just like private equity that really asks
Mm.
about the startups. They say, how much is your annual recurring revenue? This
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
solid monthly bills that you get every single day as revenue. It doesn't matter if you have a good month or a bad month, you're getting the same subscription fees. So if you move away from the billable hour and you move over to flat fees and subscription fees, you can actually make way more money because you can use AI to shrink your costs and take that 12-hour task and shrink it to 1 minute. And then you can sell more business. And that is what the junior associates, when I was growing up, didn't realize is that making money is the thing. We are a business after all. And so I think that we as junior associates can do that for a law firm, or you could jump ship and be able to start a solo small practice. And there's never been a better time to be able to be a solo small lawyer. Because if you are either associate or say a partner at a big law firm and you see the light to say, oh, I'm going to go away from the billable hour practice and I'm going to instead do the flat fee, their partners at the big law firm might say, no, I'm making a lot of money with the billable hour. Thank you very much. We're going to stay billable hour. But if that person, that partner, jumps ship from the big law firm and then has a solo firm, they can say to their clients, I'm the same person I was 20 minutes ago. They bill by the hour. I'm going to do flat fee, and I'm going to charge half of what they do, and I'm still going to make more money. And then they can get more clients. So really, there's a big question as to how much the big law firms, if they don't go to the new models, that is the flat fee and the subscription fees and things like that, success fees, contingency fees. I wonder how much the big firms will stick around. And we could talk about the type of work. I know that we're running short of time, but there's cream work at the top. That is the most bet the company work or the biggest M&A. And then at the bottom is commodity work. That really is low. But in the middle of that is core work. And the real question is how much do your clients come to you for the cream work? And really how much is
Mhm.
core and commodity? And how much of that will be taken by AI?
So what is the current ratio that AI is really, efficient at taking over? Is it the cream, the commodity? Is it the core?
So a friend of mine, Jay, is one of the smartest people. She worked for Baker McKenzie, one of the biggest law firms in the world, and she did pricing for them. And she estimated that the amount of corporate legal spend or cream was only about 15% of corporate legal spend. And I'm gonna get this wrong, so I'm gonna actually look this up. It's corporate, no, 15% cream. That was right. 5% commodity, because they've already pushed
Okay.
down the cost of that to push it to low cost alternative legal service providers and that kind of thing. So 15% at the cream, 5% commodity, and then 80% of the corporate spend is in core. And this is not
Mhm.
commodity things, but it's stuff that's, just run of the mill litigation or, just regular contracts. That is the core. But then she estimates how much can AI take? And AI will, of course, take 100% of the commodity and probably 85% of the core and maybe 50% of the cream. And so if that's an estimate, but I think it's a pretty good estimate. But
Yeah.
if that's true, then how can you run a business on half of the cream and only 15% of the core? I think
Mhm.
that law firms need to be able to think a lot about where they're going to be getting their money. And one other thing is that in the United States, at least, 92% of legal needs are unmet because we lawyers are too expensive. And
Yeah.
so I wonder, we as lawyers should be thinking at 92%, economists would call that a latent market that is just waiting to
Mhm.
be tapped. So what if we take our AI, shrinking our costs to increase our profit margins? What if we take those lower costs and reach into that 92% and be able to tap into that market? And maybe we can make more money than we ever have. And we can actually serve access to justice in a way that justice has not been served before. So I think that we are really need to think as a profession about where we have been making money and where we will
Mhm.
make money. And I think those may be two very different places.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think, that's truly enlightening with regards to the real skills that junior lawyers and law students need to focus on to remain competitive. Now, Damien, are there any traditional training experiences or early career learning opportunities that risk being lost due to increased automation? And how can the profession address this,
So
perhaps?
let's think about how training happened in the old world. So when I was growing up as a baby lawyer, I would spend hours and hours with bankers' boxes full of paper looking through documents and trying to find that smoking gun from a bunch of boring documents. And the number of smoking guns that I would find in a day's time is maybe one smoking gun. And the rest of those 8.5 hours were just wasted looking through boring nothingness. The dirty secret, though, is my 12 hours of reading for one smoking gun, that 12 hours of reading made my law firm a lot of money. And so really that question is, was reading for 12 hours, boring things for one smoking gun, making me a better lawyer? Was that training me? And the answer was no. It was just wasting my time and wasting the client's money. It was not making me a better lawyer. But really, that's in the old world, that's what really made itself out to be training, is to be able to just throw bodies at a problem and let them churn and maybe bill the client for as much as they want. So right now, I think that we now have an opportunity to train our lawyers better, because people went to law school to be able to consult with the clients and to be able to help people with their problems. And if we are be able to shrink our costs to reach into that 92%, then we can maybe reach into have the associates actually do more one-on-one communications with the clients, maybe the lower income or middle income people that couldn't afford it before. And then they could actually be able to get more boots on the ground training to be able to solve business problems, or to solve litigation problems, or to solve advisory problems, or regulatory problems. That's way better training than me reading bankers' boxes in the old world, where that wasn't really training at all. So really, I think that with AI, we could be able to get rid of the drudgery. My friend Casey Flaherty says we as lawyers do a lot of thinking, and we do a lot of thunking. We do a lot of drudgery. And maybe AI can do a lot of that thunking for us, and just leaving us to do thinking, and leading us to talk to our clients more, and leading associates to be trained more by actually getting more of that work. So I think that people say that, our associates are not going to get the training that they have been. I think are just mistaken. I think that if we reach the right client pool, that is the middle class that isn't being served, and if we price our services well enough to reach that middle class, I think that we will get plenty of training for the next generation.
And hands-on at that too.
100%.
Okay. So that was very interesting, because now when you break it down like that, do you believe that primarily in the old world training, it was more geared towards training cases based for, the people who can afford it, that 8%, and leaving the rest of the 92% in the dark?
100%. So essentially, rich people were subsidizing rich people. And there's a joke, an open joke in my law firm when I was an associate, is that we as associates could not afford to hire ourselves. That is, we couldn't afford our own billable rates. And if we couldn't afford, as upper middle class people, to hire ourselves, like, what choice does the middle class person have? And so I think that, yes, we have historically been rich clients paying for rich lawyers to be able to do their work. And at least in the United States, there's a lot of discontent in the populace saying the system is rigged against me. And with that number of 92%, maybe they're right. Maybe the system is rigged, and not on purpose. I think our judges and our judicial system do the best that they can, but the system is just not really set up to serve that 92%, or at least it hasn't been until now. Now AI can be able to shrink legal fees so that I, as a poor person, can use ChatGPT. And it gives me pretty good advice. It doesn't give me yesterday's case. It doesn't give me yesterday's statute. It doesn't give me yesterday's regulation. For that, you need something like Vincent. But if you're looking for good enough, AI is pretty good for good enough. And so now we have to say, okay, what do we as lawyers do with ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude being out there doing this work? Maybe we can compete with them by giving better service. So I think that this is maybe a golden age for lawyers. We can serve that 92%.
There we go. Now, Damien, what are some of the new expectations that clients have regarding speed, cost, and transparency as AI becomes more integrated into legal services?
I'll answer that with a true story that I was on stage with Salesforce, one of the biggest companies in the world. And Salesforce at ILTACon last July said that in the first 6 months of 2025, in those first 6 months, they saved $3 million in legal fees that they used to spend on law firms that they brought in-house using tools like Vincent. That was $3 million in 6 months, and they expected $5 or $6 million by the end of the year that they used to spend on lawyers that they're using tools like mine to not spend money on lawyers. And so, a lot of lawyers just don't know why the phone stopped ringing. And so I hear that from customers, clients over and over again to say, for basic questions about what does the law say about this? Or does this violate law? Or does this violate French law or Spanish law? Or does this violate Latin American law or Singapore law? Those kind of questions just don't get asked anymore. And the lawyers can point their fingers all over the place to say, oh, it's the bad economy or it's the client had a sweetheart deal. But the point is that they're just not needed for what they're giving. And so my friend Darth Vaughn, who works for Ford Motor Company as an in-house lawyer, he's litigated for a bunch of years and then he went in-house at Ford Motor Company. He said to a bunch of lawyers, law firm lawyers, he said, hey, law firm lawyers, you have a new competitor in town. You know who it is? It's me as Ford Motor Company. And you have to tell me what you can do that I can't do as Ford Motor Company within my walls, because I already have a bunch of AI tools. I can already vibe code and do a lot of things internally. So you have to tell me what is the value that you're giving me above what I can do myself that's worth me pulling out my hard-earned dollars and wallet and giving to you. And so I think that it's not just doing work faster, better, stronger, but just showing what value are you providing as a lawyer above what in-house counsel are doing. And I think one answer to that question is what we talked about just a bit ago, is trust. That is, a large corporation hires you not just to be able to do the widgets, drafting the motions or drafting the documents, but also for what's stuck in your brain. Because I, as an in-house counsel, say, I want to know that this judge hates it when you do that. Or that we can't argue this at the negotiating table because that'll scuttle the M&A deal. That's stuff that's stuck in lawyers' brains, that it's worth me as a corporate lawyer to hire you because I don't have that insight of what the judge says or what will not go well in the negotiating table, or what happens when you represent my competitors and what happens in deals like these. All of those aspects are stuck in the lawyer's brain in the way that I, just as an in-house counsel, don't have access to. So lawyers really have to think about that. What's stuck in your brain is your moat. That is, small businesses are always thinking about what's my moat, what keeps my competitors at bay. And your moat as a lawyer is what's stuck in your brain. That is not yet in an artifact, like a document, that AI can ingest. So as long as it's stuck in your brain and not stuck in an artifact that AI can ingest, that is your moat against the AI. And that is your moat for the in-house counsel, because they need that stuff stuck in your brain. But the real question then you have as a law firm lawyer is how many of your competitors have taken that stuff in their brain and offloaded it onto an artifact and then made that into a product that people buy. And how many things that are stuck in your brain are truly unique and truly have enough value that it's worth Ford Motor Company and others pulling out their wallet and paying for it. And I think that's the real question as we go forward is what is our moat? What is our competitive advantage? And how soon can we be able to keep using that before it gets commoditized by others?
There we go. And I think this is a great segue into a message that I got on behalf of our sponsors here. Here we go. So, right now, clients are searching for answers online before they ever call law firms, more than ever. And, that's perhaps why law firms, as you mentioned, Damien, are wondering why isn't their phone ringing? And as you mentioned, what's stuck in their brain, that value? Are they communicating it before a client even calls them in? So that's why we exactly partnered with Echo Marketing for this event. You can have the best AI workflow in the world, but if your ideal client can't find you, it doesn't matter. So Echo Marketing has spent 18 years helping practice owners across industries and continents dominate their local markets. They are offering a free marketing strategy meeting specially for our attendees tonight to see if your digital presence matches your legal expertise. In your session, you'll sit down with the seasoned strategists from Equa who understand the legal service market across North America. You'll get a live audit of how you can attract more clients, build your reputation, and grow sustainably. The marketing analyst will actually spend several hours researching your online presence, your competition, your local SEO, everything, and come to the call ready to walk you through a custom recommendation just for your firm. Now, this session is designed to help you answer those questions and fix anything that's not quite working. It's a $900 valued session, completely complimentary for you tonight. So you'll see a QR on the screen. You can scan that with your phone or book the session, or else check the chat for a direct link. It'll take less than a minute to book. Now, availability is limited. Since I mentioned every audit does involve real research into your local market. And perhaps here's a way to think about offers like this. What's the risk if you say yes? Honestly, it'll just be your time. There's no obligation whatsoever. But what's the risk if you don't? You might be missing out on something that could really help you grow your practice in 2026. So I'll leave that with you, but truly, I encourage you to grab this opportunity, book your session with Equa. It'll be time well spent. Right. Now, Damien, what are the most significant ethical and risk concerns lawyers should be mindful when using AI in legal practices today?
Sure. Everyone thinks about the hallucinated cases. That is, you use ChatGPT to be able to do the research, cites a hallucinated case, that makes its way into the brief, and then the judge sanctions you for doing the hallucinated cases. That is what I think there's been over 150 or maybe 200 of those cases. So everyone thinks about those ethical risks. There's a good solution to that. And my friend and colleague Ed Walters says that solution is read the damn cases. Easy. Right? If you just read the cases, you could be able to avoid hallucinated cases. And that's something that we've done, speaking of the olden days, right? We would always read the cases, right? So I think that, the ethical risk of hallucinated cases is really a non-risk if you are a competent lawyer that has done what you were supposed to do, is to read the case for which you're citing for that particular proposition. So everyone thinks about hallucinated cases. Another aspect of ethics is to think about not just, hallucinated cases, but we mentioned this earlier, but what is your ethical duty to charge a reasonable fee? And how that is something that it is unethical to charge a fee that is too high. And the real question is, if I spend 12 hours doing that legal research, that a tool like mine literally takes 5 minutes to give you a better work product, is that a reasonable fee or not? And at least for legal malpractice in the United States, the question of whether something is reasonable or unreasonable is gauged by people in your peer group. That is, people in this city and this type of practice. Would lawyers like you do it research in the olden way or the new way? And so a bit of this is kind of everyone waiting and seeing, well, is everybody else going to run or am I going to run? But the faster everybody else runs, the more you at risk of being behind your ethical duties, because everyone else is doing things the new way and you're doing things the old way. So everyone talks about the ethical risk of using AI. I think we should be saying, what is the ethical risk of not using AI and to being able to charging your clients too high of a fee? That's number one. Number two is there's a real risk of losing business. And that, people don't think of that as an ethical risk, but I think the ethical risk of getting dinged for a hallucination sanction is very, very slim. But the business risk of losing money because your clients just don't need you anymore, that's a much higher risk. So anyway, if you don't use AI, then you've avoided that ethical risk and also lost your business. So there's a real question as to, people that don't use AI because of the ethical risks, I think, are misplacing the opportunity. So I think that regulatory risk, I don't know. I'll take this a little bit differently. So the regulatory barrier for a non-lawyer to be able to practice law in the United States is the unauthorized practice of law. That if you're a non-lawyer, you can't practice law. But I know a lot of companies that are not giving legal advice, but they are instead giving legal information. ChatGPT gives legal information. What are the cases? What are the statutes? What do the regulations say? That is not legal advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what they say. And that is not practicing law. That is just giving legal information. And so I think that the regulatory moat that says that only lawyers can be able to provide legal services, there's a real question of how much of the legal services that lawyers provide is truly legal advice. You should do something versus legal information. This is what the statute and the regulation says. Because if you're just giving legal information and not legal advice, that's the same as what ChatGPT can do. To say this is what the case says, what the statute says. And are you really practicing law if you're merely providing legal information? And if you'll give me 10 more seconds, I thought about this when I was a litigator. I thought I had the revelation about a year ago to say, how much of my 15-year litigation career was I really giving legal advice versus just legal information? Because when I would give legal information, I would say, you have three options. This is what the case, statute, and regulation says. Here are the three options you have for you. And the client would ask me, which one should I do? And I would say, oh, that's a business decision. I would say, what's your appetite for risk? If you're really risky, you do 2 and 3 and 1. But that's your decision, not mine. And I realized about a year and a half ago, I didn't give any advice. I was merely giving legal information, and I was giving options. And the reason I didn't give advice is because of, subconsciously, that was a malpractice risk. Because if I say you should definitely take number 3, and you take number 3, and bad things happen, and I could get sued for malpractice. But if I say it's a business decision, I've offloaded that advice part, and I just gave information that saved me on the malpractice side. But was I really practicing law? And so I think we really need to think about, if we're going to be competing with the AI, maybe we should give more advice and give the more humanity in the way that the ChatGPT and others can.
Now, what about client information, right? How does that play into the ethical standards of things?
So there is a joke, but it's not a joke, that if you're not paying for a product, you are the product. You're not the customer. And so if you are not paying for ChatGPT or you're not paying for Gemini, there is no guarantee that they will not train on your data. So if you upload your client data, they may well train on it. Does that violate ethics? I'll let you talk to your regulator, but a lot of jurisdictions say, yeah, that would violate your ethical obligations. But if you were to instead, the tool I'm building with my team is Vincent, that has agreements saying that we will never train on your data. That's point number 1. And number 2, our partners at OpenAI and Anthropic and Google will not train on your data. There's zero data retention there, and we pay a lot of money to make that true. And then number 3, to say if your data is uploaded, it is secure because we have SOC 2 Type 2 certification. We also have ISO security certification. That is third-party auditors looking through our systems and saying your data is secure at rest. So if your data is secure at rest and we won't train on your data and and then our partners won't train on your data, that is just like, do I trust Microsoft to not train on my data when I've been using Outlook for the last 30 years? And the answer is, of course, because we have a contract with Microsoft saying that they will not breach our confidentiality. And if that's true, that contractually you're now able to upload your client's safe data to email, maybe then contractually you can also upload your client's data to Vincent and to other tools like it. So I think that we are really, when I was back in 1999, there was a real question as to whether it was ethical to be able to email our clients, because email is inherently insecure. Because if it's unencrypted, you couldn't eavesdrop and listen to email. But of course, everybody used email. And it was a real question, can I go to the cloud? Is that ethical? Everybody's in the cloud, right? So we know where the movie ends. Is it ethical to upload your client's data? Of course it is, because you have contracts.
There we go. Now, Damien, who should ultimately be accountable for AI-assisted legal work? The individual lawyer, the firm, or the technology provider?
In the United States, we had a president named Dwight Eisenhower, and he said the buck stops here. That he said that I'm the U.S. president, therefore any decisions that are made under me, I'm going to take responsibility for it. So I think that the answer to your question is whoever signs the piece of paper, whether that's a contract or whether that's a brief, pleading, or motion. In the United States, we have something called Rule 11, saying that when I sign a document, that means that everything above my signature is true and correct. And it's true and correct whether a paralegal wrote it, true and correct whether an associate wrote it, or it's true and correct whether it was drafted by an AI. Under any one of those, it's my signature, therefore it's my being bound by Rule 11. And so I think the buck always stops with you, because it's your professional responsibility to tell the court or to tell opposing counsel, be straight and true with them. So of course, I as a lawyer might have my law firm's malpractice insurance covering me. Right. So to your question, is it stop with the lawyer or does it stop with the firm? Well, if I commit malpractice, is the firm going to pay for my defense for malpractice? At least the firm's insurer. Then I guess maybe in a sense it would be the law firm where the buck would stop. But then third question is technology providers. There's a real question, like if I used Westlaw wrong, could I sue Thomson Reuters for giving me bad results and not giving me the case that I wanted in the first page when it was actually stuck in the fourth page? Can I sue Westlaw for giving me bad results? And the answer is no.
Mm.
Of course not. That is a tool. Your job as a lawyer is to use the best tool for the job. And just because you didn't use the tool well enough doesn't mean that the tool was bad. So really, there's a question as to, if ChatGPT hallucinates a case, can you sue ChatGPT? That seems silly, right? Because you know that there's a risk of hallucination. So why would you sue OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT? So anyway, so between those three, between the lawyer and the law firm and the technology provider, the buck always stops with the lawyer, and maybe with the firm if they cover the malpractice.
Now, Damien, what about malpractice insurance? Are there any updates that lawyers should be looking for right now?
Malpractice insurance, I don't know of many malpractice insurers that have spoken about AI recently. I know when ChatGPT first came out in 2023 or so, in March of 23, I know one large malpractice insurer in the United States said, hey, beware of artificial intelligence. And I think they were largely looking to, that was right around the time that Steve Schwartz was the first AI lawyer that gave hallucinated cases. So one malpractice insurance carrier in the U.S. said, "Hey, don't be like Steve Schwartz. don't do what he did." But that was 3 years ago, almost to the day. I think it was March of 2023. But I've not heard of any malpractice insurers talk about it since, largely because a lot of the problems that were there in 23 are solved problems now. At least with tools like mine, where we give you the actual non-hallucinated text from the actual non-hallucinated cases 100% of the time. It's not 90%, not 99%, but 100% of the time, the text on the right-hand side will be non-hallucinated, and 100% of the time, the case will be non-hallucinated. And you might say, well, Damien, how can you say 100% and not 99%? And I can say 100% is because this text was not created by a large language model, was not created by AI. It was created by a database search, just like we've been doing database searches for 40 years. So 100% of the time, if that text and case are non-hallucinated, it's a solved problem. And really, that's why I think malpractice insurers haven't been talking about it recently.
Got it. Now, I think we are long overdue to really be introduced to Vincent. Can you tell us a little bit about Vincent, where the idea came from, really, and how has development gone, and even why the name Vincent even?
Sure. So Vincent is part of VLEX and part of Fastcase. So 25 years ago, I didn't start the company, but back 25 years ago, Ed Walters and Phil Rosenthal in Washington, D.C. in 1999 said, gosh, isn't it sad that we work at a very large law firm and we only have two choices, Westlaw and LexisNexis, to be able to do legal research? Maybe we should start a third to democratize the law. And so in 1999, they started collecting cases. They started collecting statutes and they started collecting regulations. And so for 26 years, they've been doing that in the United States. And then in Spain, in Barcelona, Luis and Angel were doing the same thing in Barcelona, where they said, hey, we should collect all the cases, the statutes, and the regulations. And they did it in Spain, and then they went to the United Kingdom, in Latin America, and then they went to Singapore and Hong Kong. So they collected between the two. They then merged in 2023. So between Fastcase, which became VLEX, there are about 1 billion legal documents. And 1 billion legal documents is a lot of cases, statutes, regulations, motions, briefs, pleadings. And people cared about it, but not nearly as much as when in 2023, people realized, oh, wait, if you have the cases, the statutes, and the regulations, AI can do amazing things. And if you don't have the cases, the statutes, and the regulations, ChatGPT can do amazing things, right? But you really need the cases to be able to get grounded in truth answers. And not only do you need the cases from a while ago, but you need yesterday's case, because you need to know that yesterday's case overruled 2 years ago case. And so this kind of idea of recency was very important. So Vincent was kind of born out of the fact that we had 1 billion legal documents. And then we could be able to use those 1 billion legal documents, the cases, statutes, and regulations, to give grounded in truth answers. And if you think about our competitors, who are the duopoly, whose names you know that I'm not going to say. But if you're a duopoly, what incentive do you have to innovate and spend money on research and development? Why don't you just reap your monopoly, duopoly profits? And so there are only 3 companies in the world that have yesterday's case, yesterday's statute, and yesterday's regulation. Those 3 companies are Thomson Reuters, where I used to work, LexisNexis, and us. And so when you think about who's doing innovation in the way that we are, there's only one game in town that has the yesterday's case and is doing innovation like that. So anyway, so Vincent is quite fun that we have an amazing playground of that data. And we're going through and just extracting everything we can from that data, extracting every site and running through them and then feeding them back in the way that lawyers, transactional lawyers and litigators found delightful. So it's maybe the most exciting time to be in legal technology that I've ever been.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious, I don't know how much details you can get into it, but how does Vincent know about yesterday's case?
So we go to all the courts every day and we pull in yesterday's case from all the courts. And if you're a customer of ours and you download a PDF and spend the $1.20 or $3 for the government to do that, we also get that PDF. So we get the benefit of all of our customers downloading PDFs and then it becomes ours. And then we download from the courts every day of those things. So we have that recency. And we also are able to say that yesterday's case overruled 3 years ago case. This idea of a citator, to be able to say that this case is good law or bad law, again, that's really hard to build. And we've been building it for 25 years.
Here we go. Now, let's look at sorry about that. Let's look at what does future-ready lawyer and law firm look like in an AI-driven legal ecosystem.
I think,
Break it down for us.
yeah, a future-ready lawyer there's a hockey player named Wayne Gretzky that said, I don't skate to where the puck is, I skate to where the puck will be. And so I think that if you really want to be future ready, you have to say what's coming down the pike. Everyone's talked about hallucinated cases. Everyone's talked about, I've used ChatGPT to be able to do my marketing material. That's not future ready. That's just today ready, or actually yesterday ready. If you really want to be future ready, you have to think about what's coming down the pike. Where's the puck going? And where the puck is going is that we are increasingly in an agentic world. And if you don't know about agents, it's that it's a good example is that OpenClaw, the new paradigm where you have hundreds of agents within a machine all doing work, and they call them agent swarms. So you have these artificial intelligence bots going out to your calendar and seeing what you need to be doing today. And they go to your email and say, here are some draft responses to the emails. And then they go, if you want to go on a trip, they'll go to all the websites and they'll see, okay, what are the things to do? What are the best deals on those things? And maybe they make a phone call to be able to see, whether they can get a better deal. So these are all agents that are working on your behalf without you doing a thing. And so thinking about where future ready lawyers are going to be, they're probably going to be thinking about the thing that I've been thinking about and been talking with my team about, is that right now we're building a swarm of agents, but they're lawyer agents. And what lawyer agents, one of them is an associate agent who does what I did as an associate at a law firm, where I would say, here's all of my clients' emails, all my clients' documents, all my clients' Slack messages. And associate bot will go through those and will do issue spotting to be able to say, oh, this looks like a breach of contract issue, or this looks like a trade secret issue, right? So it does the issue spotting to identify causes of action. And then it also identifies what are the jurisdictions that are applied. Is this New York law or is this California law? And then it does research to be able to say, what are the elements of breach of contract in New York? And what are the elements of breach of contract in California? And then once it has those elements, then you could say, okay, based on the documents I have, can you fill in buckets 1, 2, and 3 in California? And can you fill in buckets 1, 2, and 3 in New York? And what if bucket 2 is missing? There's no evidence for bucket 2. It will draft questions for the client to be able to say, hey, client, can you fill in bucket 2 to answer this question? So it'll do that for a while and do all that work that an associate lawyer would do. But then we also have a partner bot that then criticizes the associate and says, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then the associate says, you're right, and then goes off and does things. So we'll do some back and forth then. But then we also have an opposing counsel bot that we then throw the motion or the brief or the pleading over to the opposing counsel. And then they respond saying, no, you're going to lose because I'm going to argue this, that, and the other thing. And then the associate bot on the other side gives it up to the partner bot who will then throw rocks, right? So they go back and forth and then take the final product from them and give it back to my bots. And then I can make my arguments better because I can cut those arguments off at the past and bolster their arguments. But then we also have judge bots where then we throw the outputs into the judge and the unbiased judge is able to say, I'm going to rule for you because of this reason. But it's not just one judge. It could be 3 judges or 5 judges. And then we could say 60% of the time, the judge loves this way, but 40% of the time, the judge loves this way. And then take that output. And then my associate bots can do even better to be able to draft, to be able to anticipate, to say, judges like this more, so I'm going to put this in there. Everything I just showed you or spoke to you about was before any human even touches it. So after all of that work, you get the end product. to be able to say, now this is battened by opposing counsel. It was thrown rocks at by the judge. This is maybe the statistically likely argument. And then you as a human can say, perfect, let's get it out the door. Or you could say, hey, associate bot, maybe you should do this other thing, and then start the whole process again. So this is where the future ready lawyer is thinking about. This isn't just ChatGPT, what I described. This is agent swarms, lawyer swarms that are doing better than any human can do. And the real question is, what are we teaching our associates to do in this world? And what do law students, what should they be thinking about in this world? I don't know if anybody knows.
Wow. Yeah, that's just complete simulations you were just talking about. That just happens in the background. And I mean, I'm just wondering what would a lawyer on the opposing counsel who does not pick up these agentic swarms really, where would they stand if they're, facing you?
That's, it's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. If you're not doing this, I was literally, my next door neighbor over here wants to build a fence right up against my house, within 6 inches of my house. And so I've used Vincent to be able to find really good arguments, be able to say, no, I have an easement, or I have adverse possession, or I have practical boundary, there are all sorts of causes of action. And I very quickly created many pages of really, really good legal arguments that are all grounded in actual cases, actual statutes, and actual regulations. The opposing counsel, or my neighbor, accused me of having AI slop. And AI slop, if you don't know, is just like stuff that AI is just cranking out like marketing materials. But I was offended by that because I said, when I worked at a massive law firm, Robbins Kaplan, if that massive law firm cranked out 25 pages of solid legal argument, that's really good lawyering. But because I used AI to crank out 25 pages of even better lawyering than I did at Robbins Kaplan, but I used AI to do it and to help me, that's AI slop. Even though it was better output than I did at Robbins Kaplan, those 25 pages. Is it AI slop, or is it just the way lawyering is done today? And I think that bringing a knife to a gunfight is not a point of honor. That is just stupidity. And if you say, oh no, I do all of my research in books, thank you very much. Do you respect that lawyer more? Of course not, because they're doing it wrong. Or if they say, the lawyers that say, I don't use email, I don't have a cell phone. Do you respect that lawyer? So really, when people say, I don't use AI, how is that going to weather in 10 years, 5 years, next year? It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Absolutely. Outdated technology. Now, before we head into the last question, I would like to remind our attendees, you can ask your questions if you have any from Damien and get your answers right here, right now. Right. Now, Damien, looking ahead to 5 to 10 years, how do you expect AI to really reshape the lawyer-client relationship and the delivery of those legal services?
There's a saying that I don't know if you've heard of Ray Kurzweil, but he in 1992 said that the singularity, that is the point where human intelligence and machine intelligence would meet and then machines would blow by us. He predicted back in 1992 that would be in 2030. And he actually was a little bit late on that because AI has already blown past most people in intelligence. So whenever somebody asks me a question like you just asked to say, where are we going to be in 5 years? And I don't know where we're going to be in 6 months. Because, if you'd asked me a year ago whether we would be here today, that is AI beating 99, it got 99% of the questions right. Actually, 100% of the questions right on the bar exam. So in 2003, it beat 90% of humans. And today it beats 100% of humans on the bar exam. So if you'd asked 6 months ago, tell me about agent swarms, I would have been like, you're crazy. We're never going to be there, right? But here we are, where the thing I just mentioned is now definitely possible. So a year from now, gosh, I have no idea where we're going to be. 5 years from now, oh man, like we're going to be going maybe over some Overton window that I just don't know what's on the other side. But I'll give you a little bit of, in November, I was asked to go to the Vatican to talk about AI with the Vatican. And while I was there, I was working with, collaborating with somebody who works on Ray Kurzweil's team. And we were talking about what happens when maybe the cost of legal services shrinks because the number 12 hours gets shrunk to 2 minutes. And it's not just legal services, but also accounting services and also, any consultancy. And so maybe the cost of services just shrinks. And then as robots do more work and robots are doing more work, maybe the cost of goods similarly shrinks. And when you have the cost of goods and services, the economy wide shrinks, then you end up with massive deflation, not inflation, but deflation. And what does a world look like with massive deflation? And yours, one path is that we as lawyers make way more money because we can shrink our costs and be able to reach what's called Jevons Paradox. For people who don't know what Jevons Paradox is, we thought that Jevons Paradox means we thought LED light bulbs were going to save us a lot of energy, but they're so cheap, we just leave the lights on all the time. Jevons Paradox says that if you make something more efficient, society uses more of it. And so right now, light bulbs are too cheap to measure. And what if legal services were too cheap to measure? What if, with Jevons Paradox, what if you would say to me as a lawyer, you'd say, oh, every time I call Damien, it's $1,000. Forget it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna risk it, right? But if that $1,000 shrinks to $50 or $25, I'll call you every day. And in fact, maybe I'll spend more than $1,000 in a given year. So maybe if you shrink the unit cost, people spend more money on things, just like they leave the lights on all the time. So that's a long way of answering your question that 5 years from now, who knows, right? Maybe we just have a shrinking deflation in the economy. And when that happens, who knows? Or maybe we have Jevons Paradox, where we can actually use that shrunk cost to serve that 92% of legal needs that are unmet and be able to have that 92%. Maybe we can dip into that latent market and serve all the people that haven't been served. So anyway, so if you were to give me a crystal ball, I think that we're going to serve in 5 years more people than we have been in the past. And I think everyone will have a better idea of what their legal obligations are and what they should do legally. And I would have to say that's probably a better world for our society. Last thing I'll say is that my friend Bridget McCormick would say that she's from the American Arbitration Association. She says that law is society's operating system. Windows is the operating system for machines. The law is the operating system for society. So I think that 5 years from now, our operating system is going to be doing pretty well.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking perhaps it's about time we meet that investment of technology and finally see that market correction. There's always that question about, is AI and data centers hiking up electricity prices, and we're all witnessing that all over, but perhaps that's for another time.
I really, yes, you have me back. I'm happy to talk about such things.
Wonderful. So, Damien, if you had to summarize this entire hour into one sentence for our lawyers listening in, what is the headline?
The headline is jump in and start using the tools. Because the people say, well, what books should I read? Who should I listen to? And that's almost as silly as saying, what book should I read to learn how to swim? And the answer is, of course, you don't read a book to learn how to swim. You learn how to swim by swimming. So I would say that the one takeaway is to, if you've been intrigued a little bit by what we've been talking about for this last hour, jump in and use the free tools. That is the ChatGPT out of the box. So that's number one. Number two, spend the $20 a month to be able to see how much better that tool is. And it's way better. And then learn how good or bad those two are. And then after that, spend a little money on a tool that is built for lawyers, by lawyers, that has yesterday's case and yesterday's statute and yesterday's regulation, and see how much better those are than the first two. So I would say start swimming and see how you should really bring a gun to a gunfight.
There we go. No. Right. Damien, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us tonight. Before we end, a reminder, make the best use of Equa's complimentary marketing strategy meeting for the clients in your area searching for the offers you deliver. Make sure your firm is the one they find and choose. Link is in the chat box one last time for you to book that session. Dear audience members, please take 30 seconds to fill out this feedback survey that will pop out as you exit the webinar. And Damien, do hang out for 2 minutes extra just for a quick live debrief. Fantastic. With that being said, I'm Dan Adisha, and thank you for rebuilding the law firm of the future with us. Good night.